The term organic is actually a legal term that has a lot of wiggle room associated with it. So I personally think that organic is going to be the new heart healthy of the next decade, which means that marketers realize if it says organic on it, then we will just pick it off of the shelf because we don't want to have to invest the time or energy to find out what that actually means. So I'm going to define what organic is with a grain of salt, because I think that it does help that you buy organic, because it shows the food producers, who are only responding to what we say is important to us, that eating organic is important. But at least for some of us, we have to go that extra yard and show that it can't just talk the talk, it has to walk the walk. That organic actually has to mean something. So you make a first step when you buy organic, but we know now that most of the big food producers and corporations, they're buying up lots of organic food productions and cutting costs. You don't know where the food comes from. And what does it actually mean? Well, let's talk about a few things that it means, at least right now, that sometimes people don't know anything about. And in general, we would say that organic is going to be free of pesticides, which are chemicals that are put on the plants to encourage growth, or given to the plants in general, including the plants that the animals eat, to get rid of bugs, rodents, all kinds of things that would threaten yield in any way. So we eat those. A big problem with pesticides is that in our mind we think because it's a spray that it can be washed off. And many of these pesticides cannot be washed off because they are actually incorporated into the genes and the gene expressions of the plant. So for example, corn itself is actually a pesticide, because when animals eat the corn, insects that they're trying to control die from eating that corn. We don't die, but the insects do. So the corn really isn't food anymore. It's insecticide. That's what corn is. It's an insecticide. It's been genetically modified to express this. There's no washing it off. So you would need to keep following up on this, talking to people, and keep yourself knowledgeable, because these changes that are necessary to keep some sort of a profit margin, which is razor thin at this point. We're in a global economy where many countries are competing to put forth food. And there's a number of countries around the world, as they increase their technology, they're going to be able to decrease their costs, which means it becomes even more important for us to do something to be able to maintain some sort of edge. And in fact, we've lost our edge in a lot of places. So that's in the whole economy of the world, but we're really talking about right now the economy of your body and value. So when you look at organic food, the first thing that you wanted to do is be free of these chemical pesticides, because we don't really know what they do inside. We know that they're poison to an insect, but they're not necessarily poison to us. But they also are poison to other insects that we don't know, which disturbs the balance and circle of life. So we are pests too. As far as the earth is concerned, human beings are pests, because the earth offers a bounty of food. Like, we have a crop, and we go around and take what we want and destroy it and leave a lot of mess lying around, just like rats and roaches. You know, we're verminous in ourselves. We just don't look at us that way. So one man's, a pest is all a matter of perspective, you could say. So when you eat organic, you're taking in at least a little bit less of those chemicals that are used as a pesticide. So that's going to cost more money, because pesticides increase yield, which means more product, and that means you have more to sell, so you can make more money, especially if it's subsidized, which is a topic for another talk. The next reason is hormones and antibiotics. So it doesn't matter whether you're talking about animals or plants, because many of the plants that we're growing right now go to grow animals, grow livestock and their products, milk and eggs, big, fast, and fat as possible. So we shouldn't be surprised when we're eating the same thing as the livestock that we are also growing big, fat, as fast as possible. So how do we differ from livestock? Well, livestock is slaughtered basically the second it reaches pretty much the end of the juvenile period, the end of the growth spurt. That's it for them. So these animals that are livestock that are brought to slaughter to sell for meat or products at the end of their juvenile phase, at the end of their growth spurt, they're not living long enough to express the diseases that could occur if they were to live to be an older age. But we are. And they also still have these medications and these hormones that were needed to make that growth go really fast. We're eating that. And maybe it causes disease. On the other hand, maybe it just causes you to get big and fat really fast, just like it does to the livestock. That's a problem in and of itself. Even if it didn't give you cancer, it's probably making you big and fat because that's what it's supposed to be doing. So when you eat that, that's what's happening to you. And there's lots of instances over with hormones in particular that we've seen over time. Many of these hormones are estrogenic, we call them, which is a female hormone effect, because the estrogen in females bring forth change girls into women, and to a large extent that means putting on more fat so you can be fertile. So we put these into many of the foodstuffs so they become fatter, but we're eating this more than we need as females, and males definitely don't need so much of it. So much of our food that we're eating and that we're feeding to our animals is estrogenic, which means it's feminizing, which means it's fattening to a certain extent. So females need estrogen. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be having it, but in a human body, it's always in balance with all the rest of the hormones. So when we dump a lot of these hormones in that affect our cells as if it's a naturally produced hormone, it has a certain effect, the same one that we see in the animals that we're giving. So that's the hormonal effect of eating non-organic foods, because it has hormones on it. And that's not the same as the antibiotics, which has a different set of problems. The next thing we see in our non-organic food as opposed to organic food is a different effect with hormones that probably should be talked about. So in this country, we eat a lot of milk and dairy and cheese. And mammals, which are the only animals that produce milk, that's what a mammal is, which would be like mostly cows, but some goats, and in some countries, sheep. You know, this is where cheese comes from. So we love cheese, especially since Pizza Hut became invented. So pizza really made, if you look at how much cheese we're eating, it makes the cheese go way up like this. So cheese has inherently pleasurable sensations. It has these caseomorphins, which basically help a baby love to drink milk. And nature's way of dealing with that is all adult mammals can't digest milk anymore because they can't digest the sugar. Humans would have died off as a species, except that we developed mutations, actually several mutations in different parts of the world, which allow us to now digest milk again as an adult. This isn't something that naturally occurred. This was our survival of the fittest, because if we hadn't found a way to drink milk, or mainly eat cheese as a dairy product, we probably wouldn't have survived, because it was an important source of protein and fat in our diet at the beginning of agriculture. So now a lot of us have this. Some people don't, but a lot of people do. And we can eat this dairy. And dairy is very, very popular, and became even more popular when you could get a food like pizza, which would be really hard to make at home. You can get it cheap and easy almost anywhere you can go, and of course your kids can get it at school, and it's on every hamburger and things like that. So where did all this extra milk come from? Well, a cow only gives a little bit of milk every day, but we found that one, we started off by making cows meat cows or milk cows. So we started to divide up the ones. So where do they take their energy from the food they eat? What do they put it towards? The ones who put it towards making more protein, more muscle, more fat on their body, those became meat cows and meat cattle. And the ones who are able to convert that into milk, they become milk cows. But that little bit, a gallon a day, that would be enough to feed a calf or two, wasn't nearly enough to supply Pizza Hut, Domino's, and all the other, pizza outlets that are all over the country. So what we needed to do was up that milk production, and we did that with hormones. So we give hormones to the cows, and basically that amps their milk production up many, many, many fold. So in this life of a dairy cow, basically everything's extracted from them. So they go from making 1 gallon of milk a day to 20, 40, even just an unbelievable amount of milk. And this hormone doesn't need to be marked on the dairy, so you don't know that it's there. But if it's organic, at least at this point, that means it's not there. And people are starting to put on dairy that it's BHCG free, which is this bovine growth hormone, which enhances milk production. But we need to understand that just getting rid of that isn't going to solve the problem, because we still need to make more inexpensive. And this is a way of making a lot of milk really cheap. So the bottom line is, real food that isn't adulterated with these substances, drugs, hormones, pesticides, chemicals, it's going to cost more. Sometimes it's going to cost a lot more. And you need to make that decision personally about what goes into your body.